Today I'm out in drizzly Ann Arbor, Michigan, taking a look at the biggest news from Chevy this calendar year. This is the all-new Chevy Silverado EV, the half-ton electric truck from Chevy. Core things to know if you don't want to know anything else: this is going to start at $77,995 for the work truck version at the moment. There are less expensive editions coming, but those less expensive editions no longer include a $40,000 Silverado EV. This work truck version gives you 510 horsepower, dual electric motors, and up to 450 miles of EPA certified range. Yes, Chevy has EPA certified the Silverado EV. Now let's take a deeper dive. How does the Silverado EV get so much more range than the related Hummer EV, and how does it get 130 miles more range than an F-150 Lightning? Well, aerodynamics plays a significant role here. You'll notice that the front-end design looks in some ways a little bit more related to Chevy's car family than the truck family. It's not just a Silverado 1500 with a blanked-out grille and nothing else done. This is a dedicated electric truck platform. A lot of the relationship between this and the rest of the Ultium platform is also there, so some of the components are related, but not exactly the same as the Cadillac Lyriq, for instance. The front end is certainly more aerodynamic and more sculpted. The hood is shorter, much more of a focus on aerodynamics lower on the bumper as well. The Hummer EV, of course, has the big chunky tow hooks up to 15 inches of ground clearance, whereas the Silverado EV is more focused on traditional truck uses and greater range and greater aerodynamics. As you move around to the side, you'll definitely notice the difference between this and the Lightning. Again, that front end really curves in. You can see that long curve and that accent light there. Headlights are actually down there. This is just the daytime running light and the turn signal strip. And then we certainly have that shorter hood profile. That does result in a smaller front trunk than we find in the Lightning, but more efficient overall packaging as far as the entire vehicle goes. Structurally, the Ford and the Chevy are very different. The Lightning is a traditional body-on-frame truck, although it does use a unique frame versus the regular F-150. The Silverado, on the other hand, is a clean sheet design that's a unibody pickup truck. Now, full disclosure, Chevy disputes that terminology when applied to the Silverado EV. They want to say that this is a new category of body, frame, battery integral. As far as definitions go, however, either you have a separate frame or you don't, therefore this is a unibody truck. But that's actually a big advantage versus something like the Lightning. This has a lot more structural rigidity because everything is all tied together. We also have the ability to put in a truly massive battery pack. Chevy will not give us official battery pack specifications, but they will say that this uses the same 24 module pack as the Hummer truck, so about 212 kilowatt hours of actual battery capacity in there. And that would be really tricky to package in a traditional body-on-frame truck. The battery occupies basically this entire black section just underneath the doors. Now, speaking of the doors, if you were to open up the doors, you would notice that the step-in height is certainly lower than some pickup trucks available in America, even with decent ground clearance. And that's because of that body-on-frame integrated thing going on there. Now, the one downside that some folks are going to complain about is this wing back here. This is a structural element, of course, because it's a unibody design, so similar to what we found in the Chevy Avalanche, etc., for slightly different reasons, because the Avalanche wasn't really a unibody vehicle, but this gives the bed extra structure. Then, of course, we find the bed back here. At 233 inches long, all Silverados, work truck or otherwise, are going to be the exact same length. Big four-door cab there, 5-foot 11-inch bed behind. Now, you will be able to put 8-foot items completely in the bed if you drop the tailgate. They will go right to the edge of the tailgate. The front-end styling might be a departure from the Silverado 1500, but out back, it's very similar. We have full LED taillight modules, red turn signals, of course, right back here. This is the work truck version, so we have that work truck badging. Backup camera nice and high right here, pointing down there at the hitch. The multi-pro tailgate, or whatever it is that Chevy calls it, will be available in the Silverado EV at a later date. It's not available in this work truck form right now. The other thing to know is that we don't have exactly the same bed dimensions as a regular Silverado 1500, so the accessories and how things mount on top is going to be a little bit different. Now let's talk about the electric drivetrain. Again, under the body we have that over 200 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery pack, but no official specs from Chevy. Later, there's going to be a smaller battery pack. Again, no official specs from Chevy. This one gives you 450 miles of EPA range, and they are saying that is EPA certified. There are a few other things you should know. At the moment, the work truck is going to come standard with 350 kilowatt DC fast charging and a 19.2 kilowatt onboard level 2 charger. But those specifications will change with future versions because less expensive versions of the work truck will not offer the 350 kilowatts of DC fast charging and may offer a slower level 2 charger. Some of those details still have to be worked out. So again, keep in mind that $77,995 is where this model is starting, but there will be less expensive models coming at some point soon. Some nice touches are that Chevy does include a dual voltage EVSE with the work truck version. We have a 32 amp level 2 connector there and a 15 amp 120 volt connector. Also, it seems that at the moment, they're all going to come with the vehicle to load adapter here. You'll be able to offboard up to 10.2 kilowatts of electric power. Through the onboard connectors, that totals just over 7 kilowatts. Then you'll get an extra approximately 3 kilowatts if you use this little guy right here. It just plugs into the J1772 connector, and then we get this little breakout box, which is pretty cool. That gives you a 240 volt outlet and 2 120 volt outlets. There's also going to be a different version of this that gives you more 120 volt outlets. Also, what's intriguing is that it seems like other manufacturers are going to be able to create their own kinds of breakout boxes for this vehicle. We don't have too many details just yet. Also, on the not too many details just yet, keep in mind that General Motors has said they're going to adopt the Tesla charge connector, also known as NACS in North America. Most likely, that connector is going to be found right back here, same place the CCS connector is, but we don't have any details just yet. Like, what does that mean for the vehicle to load offboarding? Probably it means nothing, because you can probably do that with the NACS connector as well, but some of these details have yet to be sorted. Starting in 2024, GM says that vehicles will be able to access the Tesla charger stations, the supercharge stations, and then in 2025, the vehicles will actually get the same connector that we find on modern Teslas. So these guys shipping right away are going to have the older connector that we find on most EVs outside the Tesla window at the moment. Here's how Chevy breaks out the vehicle to load capability. Via the outlets that are on board the truck itself, we get about 7.2 kilowatts of inversion. The rest happens on that vehicle to load breakout box. Then we have various outlets around the vehicle. There's a 30 amp twist lock in the bed. Up here in the front trunk, we get just a 120 volt 20 amp outlet. It's not a bank of outlets like we find in the Lightning, but you can obviously bring your own breakout boxes, extension cords, etc. The front trunk is also a little bit smaller than the one that we find in the Lightning because this hood is a little bit shorter, giving us more interior room than you find in the Lightning, and just the general way that GM has chosen to package the front end with that slightly lower roof line, or sorry, hood line, to give you better visibility of the road. You can still put 22-inch roller bags. Here's my luggage for the week here. You can actually put them in this upright position and still close the lid for the front trunk. You could actually put about 3 of them back here, but you couldn't put 4 like you can in the F-150 Lightning. For the work truck, this is not a completely powered lid. You latch it right like that, and then it will power close the rest of the way, but it doesn't power open. This is a 2-button press on the remote, pops up, and then it is a manual hood open. If, however, you get the consumer-focused trucks, then you will get a full powered front trunk like you find in the Hummer. Cargo practicality is going to be the highest in the Silverado with the flip and fold tailgate and the midgate option. Much like the Chevy Avalanche of yore, this will have the ability to completely drop the divider between the cab and the bed. That is one of the big advantages to being a unibody truck like this, and then give you about 11 feet of cargo capacity from the end of that flip and fold tailgate all the way to the backs of the front seats. But the work truck version is not going to get that option, at least for the moment. We do, however, have well integrated side steps, and then down here we have camera inputs for your trailer. This is one advantage to the Chevy truck lineup that I've noted for a while. We have 2 camera inputs. Those are going to be standard on this work truck version for the moment, and a 7-pin wiring harness connection. Those allow you to have a camera on the back of your trailer for invisible trailer functionality and a camera on the inside of your trailer if you want to see what's going on with your cargo. During my time with the Silverado EV, I found the driver's seat to be quite comfortable. The general seat design is going to be similar in the consumer truck, but this is of course the work truck version, so the seat does not adjust for height, something that I was surprised to see missing. We have a recline lever, and then we can slide the seat forward and backward, but if you're that much taller or shorter than I am, you might find the driving position a little bit awkward. I have maybe about 5 inches of headroom left, so folks up to 6'5", 6'6" will probably be fine as long as you don't mind sitting a little bit higher in the cabin. Shorter folks, that might be a bit more of a problem. Something else that I find unusual about this, or the reason maybe I find it unusual, is that we have a power tilt telescopic steering column, something I did not expect to find on a work truck with the urethane steering wheel. It's clear that when designing the Silverado EV platform, they decided this cabin should be really, really big. With this front seat comfortably adjusted to me at 6 feet tall, you can see I probably have a foot of legroom left. I can recline out, and I can't actually get my toes to touch the air vents under that front seat. There is a lot of legroom going on in here. A little bit less headroom than in the front, but it's still maybe about 4 inches or so. The way this ceiling is cut in, it does look like it's obviously designed for a sunroof that you're going to find in the consumer version, and that does mean that the headroom cutout for the rear passengers is focused right on that headrest area there. If I move out of the way and lift up the seats, you'll notice that we have lots of storage area under the seats because we have essentially a completely flat floor thanks to that skateboard style battery pack. Somewhat surprising for a work truck, we find air vents in the center console. We also have 2 USB charge only ports right there and a 120 volt power outlet. Here's a closer look at the ceiling. You'll notice I get the most headroom if my head's pretty square with that headrest, and then the roofline actually curves down a little bit in this area, likely again because of the availability of moonroofs in other versions. As we look around the interior, keep in mind this is the work truck version, but, again, keep in mind this is essentially an $80,000 truck. Up here we find the OnStar telematics buttons, those sun visors. The driver and front passenger have height adjustable shoulder belts and height adjustable headrests. There are grab handles for the 3 passengers in the vehicle, so you can see we have one up there for the front passenger, and then grab handles back there to make getting in and out of the back pretty easy. As you'd expect in a work truck, vinyl and hard plastics are the name of the game here, so we find vinyl upholstery and vinyl floors in all versions of the work truck. It does appear to be pretty easy to clean and blow out. Moving over to the front doors, all hard plastic here because that does help improve durability. Hard plastics down there around the bottom of the door, including around that bottle holder, etc. That helps keep scuff marks at bay. And then the one downside, of course, is that we also have hard plastic armrests on the doors. Moving over to the dashboard, we definitely find a different style than we find in the gasoline-only Silverado 1500. There's no second glove compartment here in the dashboard. Instead, we just get a sort of cargo slot there, I guess you could say. You could easily put larger smartphones in that area, and it does have a rubbery mat at the bottom to help keep things from sliding around. We have a fairly small glove compartment below that is actually a little bit smaller than average for a half-ton truck in America. At the top of the dashboard, we have several different styles going on here, or I guess several different textures. We have a very linear texture for the upper section of the dashboard. That's hard plastic. The midsection, also hard plastic. The big difference in the dashboard between the work truck version and the RST version of the truck that I was able to see earlier today is going to be right here in the middle of the dashboard, where we find a different infotainment system. This is an approximately 11-inch center screen. Of course, it offers Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration. Also, lots of different EV setting specific pages. We can adjust our car settings there, etc. Auto headlights are standard, but like we see in the Colorado and the Canyon, the switch to turn on and off the headlights is up here in the infotainment system. Also, the button for the one-pedal driving mode is up here. This is not stability control. This is actually to turn the vehicle off because it doesn't have a start button. If we zoom out here, you'll notice there's nothing going on that steering column. This operates very much like a Tesla. You hop in with the key, put your foot on the brake, the vehicle turns on, you then put it in drive. If you want to turn it off, you simply hit the park button there at the end of the shifter, and as you leave the vehicle, it turns itself off. If you want to turn the vehicle off yourself, you can do that right there in the infotainment system. You'll also notice that versus the RST, the dashboard has a slightly different design because these screens are smaller. So 11 inches and 8 inches over here for the instrument cluster, and this binnacle just is a little bit different in terms of its arrangement. The air vents are pretty similar though, and then down below there we get dual zone automatic climate control. Lots of storage in this center console. You can actually fit about 2 gallons of milk in here. You can see you have a bunch of GoPros and suction cups and things like that in there. That's because there's no transmission tunnel, and the body wasn't designed for one, unlike we find in the F-150 Lightning. Here we have a cup holder arrangement that can be undocked from the vehicle. I actually have to, pull that out. You can see that, and then you can undock that, and then you have access to that entire storage area where you can put longer items. We have an area here where you could put, I suppose, hanging folders, although there's no hanging folder holder like you find in a regular half-ton truck. The only soft touch armrest in here is this center armrest. And then if you want to wonder where you want to put your smartphone, you can put your smartphones in areas like that, or you can put your smartphones up there in that area. But there's no wireless charging mat or anything like that. We have 2 USB ports in there, and then some storage off to the side. Over here on the driver's side of things, we have a full LCD cluster, but again, it's a little bit smaller than you might think. It's 8 inches. You'll find a bigger one in most of the consumer versions of the Silverado. The full LCD cluster gives us a few different views, lots of information, and of course this dual dial view, which is my preference. Coming out from there, we find the urethane steering wheel, which is the only odd thing I think about this interior. I do wish that there was some option for perhaps an upgraded steering wheel design. The steering wheel itself is fairly attractive, but the urethane wheel just doesn't feel quite as nice. Over here we have the controls for that multifunction instrument cluster. Over here we have the controls for the adaptive cruise control system. You'll notice we have the same turn signal stalks and shifter stalks that we first saw on the Cadillac Lyriq. So basically the same sort of joystick style on the column there. And again, this is a powered tilt telescopic steering column, which is something I hadn't expected. To the left of the steering column, we find some additional buttons. This is where we find the electric parking brake, tow haul mode, lane centering, the button for the front trunk, the dimmer, and the electric trailer brake controller. All right, it's time to get the work truck out on the road. Obviously, 0 to 60 is pretty swift because we have the dual motors, the big battery pack, and over 500 horsepower on tap. But clearly, it's not going to be as fast as the upcoming RST version. That's going to have over 700 horsepower, and that's logical because the work truck is, of course, targeted at workers and fleet owners, etc. And a lot of fleet owners don't really want their employees to go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds in an 8,500-pound pickup truck. And this particular truck does have a curb weight just over 8,500 pounds. Interestingly, GM actually gives us a door sticker with the curb weight, payload, and the GVWR listed for this exact vehicle. Payload in this trim is just over 1,400 pounds, curb weight just over 8,500 pounds. So this is a fairly heavy electric truck, and it is a little bit heavier than the lightest versions of the Lightning, mainly because of the massive battery pack that we have under the floorboards. In case you're wondering, this is Alexandra next to me. She's our intrepid videographer and video editor, so everybody wave to Alexandra over there. You may see her more on camera coming up soon, but back to the Silverado EV. Obviously, the curb weight affects every aspect of this vehicle's dynamics. Higher curb weight obviously means we can get a little bit less payload in the back than you'll find in the F-150 Lightning, but it also means that the ride quality in the Silverado EV is better. This has a full independent suspension, so all 4 corners are independent. That's definitely different than a regular Silverado 1500. And as a result, the ride quality is better. The heavier battery pack also means that this tends to have just a smoother ride because those road imperfections like washboard pavement, broken pavement, potholes, etc. seem to upset the vehicle less out on the road. This also rides better than the F-150 Lightning, especially if you're looking at the Lightning with those higher payload capabilities. You can get over 2,200 pounds of payload capability in the Lightning, but that results in a relatively firm suspension in the rear, and it can kind of chatter across pavement. Not as much as a really light F-150 with its max payload package, but a little bit more than we find here in the Silverado EV. Now, unfortunately, because of the rain, I don't have any preliminary 60 to 0 stopping distances, but you should again logically expect this to be a little bit longer than the regular Silverado 1500. Aside from that, it has a really great feel out on the road. There are no creaks, no rattles, no bumps. You definitely get a more solid, more stable feel than the average body-on-frame truck because the body and the frame are all one piece in this vehicle, so you don't get that kind of flexing and bending that you get in a regular half-ton truck. This has a very, very solid feel to it. Now we should talk about efficiency and range because obviously that's a big advantage for the Silverado EV. Remember that this battery is enormous. It's over 200 kilowatt hours of capacity, although Chevy is being really cagey on how much of that you can use. We've been averaging a little more than 2 miles per kilowatt hour, so the 450 miles of range is absolutely believable in this truck. We haven't been necessarily babying it. It's also a little chilly outside because it's been raining all day. We've been using the heater, the headlights, the defogger, etc. And we're still getting, at this point in time, with just under 75% battery, an estimate of 336 miles of range. I find that absolutely believable simply due to the size of this battery pack. And that's one of the reasons that towing range and towing capability in the Silverado is likely going to be much better in the real world than the F-150 Lightning because we get a lot more power on board. We also have a more aerodynamic design. Because this was designed from the ground up to be an electric vehicle, it wasn't an add-on like we find in the F-150, there are certain improvements versus that F-150 in terms of aerodynamics. Also, a decent number of improvements versus the Hummer EV, because if you recall on our drive of the Hummer EV, it's not terribly efficient. And that has to do mainly with its off-road mission. It's way higher off the ground than this. It doesn't have that air dam up front. It has even more curb weight because it has those big shackles for off-road recovery, etc., the adaptive air suspension, all that's going on. Now, if you want an even more efficient version of the Silverado EV, that's probably going to be the upcoming smaller battery pack, although, again, Chevy won't give us any details on that battery pack's capacity. Handling ability in the twisties is definitely solid for the Silverado EV. Again, you'll feel the heft and the weight, but the suspension tuning is really well done. This doesn't feel upset over broken pavement. Everything has a really solid and stable feel to it. I'm really interested to see what the upcoming off-road versions of the Silverado EV will be like, because there is going to be a Trail Boss and there are going to be more off-road oriented versions of the Sierra pickup truck on this same platform coming soon as well. Now we should talk about the regenerative braking system, because GM has been pretty aggressive at tuning one-pedal driving. Not everybody is a fan of one-pedal driving. If you're not, then remember that this has a blended braking system. So if you put your foot on the brake pedal, it's going to start regenerating first, and then only engage the friction brakes when it can't regenerate any more power back into the battery. But we have the dual motor setup and we have a big battery, so the regen can be very aggressive, and this will take you to a complete stop and hold you at that stop if you want to as well. So if you want that full one pedal feel in an electric truck, we have it here. Of course, we get that relatively swift acceleration as well. Clearly, this is a work truck, so it's not going to feel like either the Lightning that we owned or the Rivian that we owned either, because those two were more luxury-oriented trims in the lineup. The Rivian has the most car-like feel and one of the best rides because, of course, it has the standard adaptive air suspension. It's also wicked fast because of the four-motor setup. But in terms of acceleration, this feels very, very similar to the Lightning. Compared to the Ford Lightning, there are obviously some differences out on the road. The traditional body-on-frame design in the Lightning means that on a dirt road like we're on here, you're definitely going to feel the body and the frame wobbling independent of one another. This feels a lot more solid, a lot more stable in that respect. Obviously, the next thing we need to do is test out the towing. So Chevy has hooked up an 8,900 pound trailer to the back. Max towing capability here is 10,000 pounds. And who knows, there may be a max tow package in the future. Chevy announced that before, but we don't know any details just yet. Some previous press releases said that this could tow up to 20,000 pounds when properly equipped. Now it's time to get approximately 9,000 pounds out on the road. The first thing you're going to notice is that the range gauge has significantly dropped. Chevy says at the moment you connect a trailer, it's automatically going to cut your range figure in half. I'm actually surprised by that. It appears that GM is not doing the same sort of cloud-connected trailer profiling, etc., that we find in the Ford lineup. Chevy says they do have trailer profiles, etc., but they're not calculating the range in the same way. They're just giving you a blanket off the top 50% reduction in range. On the Ford side, you can type in the profiles of your trailer, the trailer details, you'll get an approximate range estimate, and then as you drive the trailer, theoretically that range estimate will get better and better over time. This doesn't go quite that way, but we have a lot more battery capacity, so a lot more range capability generally speaking. This battery is at 75% right now. It says we'll do about 155 miles. That seems fairly believable given the size of the battery on board. Now, let's talk about just general towing dynamics. You'll notice that because this vehicle is heavier than the average half-ton truck, it actually feels really stable, really good with 9,000 pounds on the back. And of course, it has a lot of pep. So as we're going to come up to this stop sign, let's go ahead and see what happens if we just give it the beans. Obviously, regen braking is very aggressive as well. Right now, we're in the one-pedal drive mode. That works with the trailer connected, so you're going to get the most regen potential. Really save your trailer brakes for later. From a standstill, the first thing you'll notice is that when you floor it, you don't get as much power as if you didn't have the trailer connected. And that's not just because of the weight in the back. That's because until we hit about 43 miles an hour, Chevy ramps the power a little bit more slowly. That helps improve trailer stability and the stability of the entire truck-trailer combo, especially on loose surfaces or wet surfaces like we're on here. If you need the extra traction to get going because something is slipping, obviously it's going to start bumping power up, but just as far as straight line acceleration goes, they are going to delay things just a little bit. The next thing you'll notice is that as you slow down, the aggressive regen really kicks in. Right now we're set to the high regen. This will take you to a stop and completely stop using primarily the regeneration on the vehicle. It is going to engage the trailer brakes for additional stability, but most of the braking is going to be done by the tow vehicle, and that's really going to help recover as much energy as possible with the trailer connected. That's a little bit different than what we see in the Lightning or in the Rivian. In the Rivian, throttle liftoff regen is all you get. There's no blended braking system. In this, if you press your foot on the brake pedal, you'll actually get more regen into the battery. In the Lightning, when you engage tow mode, it actually drops the amount of throttle liftoff regen you get down, which I always thought was weird. So when I was towing in my own Lightning, I would often just put it in sport mode to get the more aggressive regen, stuff more power back into the battery. That may have something to do with the different cooling system designs that we find in this versus the Ford truck. It could be that they were more aggressive at regenerating power, better cooling, etc. into this battery. And of course, the battery is just bigger as well, so it may be more capable of handling extra power being stuffed into there. As far as the general driving dynamics with the trailer connected goes, I think this is superior to the Lightning, but the difference is not as large as GM suggested earlier in the day. I still think it has the advantage though. The suspension system is certainly more sorted. This 9,000 pounds approximately doesn't push the truck around as much, although that could have something to do with the higher curb weight that we find in this truck, and it certainly feels more sorted and more polished than the towing experience in the Rivian. Hopefully that's something that Rivian is continually working on, but the stability and traction control system in the Rivian and the air suspension give it a somewhat peculiar feel when there's this much weight on the back. Remember, the Rivian is also a slightly smaller truck. It's not that the Rivian is bad at towing, it's actually pretty good at it, it just doesn't feel quite the same as the average half-ton truck, and this certainly feels a bit more normal, a bit more typical, I guess you'd say. It almost goes without saying that the instant power and instant torque capability you get in an electric vehicle is a big advantage when towing. So we're going 40 miles an hour now. If we want to accelerate up to 50 miles an hour, it's very quick. You don't have to wait for a transmission to downshift, etc. Everything happens very rapidly. You have access to all that torque right away. Again, with the trailer connected, as long as you're going over about 43 miles an hour or so. Under that point, it's going to ramp power a little bit more slowly, again to help improve stability. But going uphill, this has an incredible amount of torque. And then, interestingly, going downhill, it has the ability to really save the brakes on your trailer. So if you live in a hilly area, as long as the battery isn't full when you start at that high altitude and go down the hill, you get a lot of additional engine braking that you just don't normally get in actually most modern pickup trucks. Since so many trucks are going to smaller displacement turbocharged engines, this actually has more ability to engine brake, for lack of a better word, than something like the average F-150. What's going to be available to the general public? Well, the first Silverado EV out is going to be this RST trim. Unfortunately, I can't turn this one on, but I can show you the rest of it. We get the RST badging here, light bar running across the front because, of course, every modern EV needs a light bar. We obviously have more body color painting sections going on there rather than the black parts. Body colored fender flares right there, really, really big wheels and tires. Let's check these things out. These are LT275 50R24, 24-inch wheels. Still get the Silverado EV logo right there. On the inside, again, I can't turn it on for you, but we can take a look around. Lots more soft touch materials. In fact, most of this interior is covered with soft touch stuff. So soft touch armrest, two different colors of stitching there. We get the leather upholstery that's both heated and ventilated. Soft touch materials going on the front doors. Again, that red and blue stitching there. Moving over to the dashboard, yes, again, more soft touch materials. We get the bigger LCDs in the dashboards. This has a larger LCD. This knob is actually floating on part of that display. So this is, I think, about a 16-inch display or so. It's absolutely massive. Power's on top. Volume knob is right there. Then we get a bigger LCD instrument cluster right over there. You can actually see what that display size looks like. I can't turn the vehicle on, but that display does turn on when you press the button. We get a red bar right across the air vents, very similar controls, very similar center console. It's a little bit bulkier with a little bit less storage because of the way this is constructed. So there's a Qi wireless charging mat, cup holders, still the big storage area right there. You can still remove that center section if you want to. The steering wheel becomes a heated leather-wrapped steering wheel with Super Cruise, which is why we have that black section right on top. Of course, we still get the powered tilt telescopic steering column, but it's now memory linked with the 2-position memory on the driver's door, and we have a powered driver and passenger seat with 4-way adjustable lumbar. In the back, we find seats that move a little bit differently. The seat bottom cushion moves forward, and then the seat back cushion folds forward because we have the real party piece in here. We have this mid-gate design. When you combine the mid-gate design with the multi-pro tailgate, sorry for the wrong name there, Chevy calls it something different. That's the GMC name. You can actually see that portion of that tailgate right back there. You can put 11-foot items from the bed all the way into the truck. Definitely really improving cargo practicality versus any other pickup truck that I can think of. Here's what that looks like from the back. You can see that hole basically there in the area of the truck. And then of course we have that trick tailgate back here where this section opens, allowing us to put those large items in and also acting like a step. In addition to that section opening, the glass also comes down, etc. If you want to know more about the mid-gate functionality, I'm going to have a separate video on that. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty. The Silverado EV is a bit more expensive than a lot of you had hoped. This exact truck is going to start at $77,995. Plus destination, of course, gets you right up to about $80,000. Coming a little bit later, there's going to be a $72,905 version that's going to drop 100 miles of range, so 350 miles range total, and it's going to DC fast charge a little bit slower because of the smaller battery pack. Now, at this point in time, both of those versions of the truck are going to be available exclusively to fleet customers. So you as the general public cannot buy one of these. You have to be a fleet customer to buy the first run of Silverado EVs. Then a little bit later, we're going to get a fantastically expensive Silverado that everybody will be able to buy. That will be the RST trim. It's going to have a slightly changed front end look. It's going to have all the body color paint sections, the more luxurious interior, the mid-gate, the multi-pro tailgate, etc. That's going to come in at $105,000, so definitely very expensive. Then, over the next year or so, they're going to be releasing less expensive versions available for fleets and available for the general public. Now, we don't have any details on those versions just yet, but again, we know that there isn't going to be a $40,000 version of the Silverado anymore. I expect the base price probably is going to tick up to about $50,000 to $55,000 starting, and that's pretty logical because this has a wicked large battery pack. It is very, very big, and big batteries are definitely expensive. As we've seen, commodity prices for lithium batteries and lithium battery components have certainly gone up lately, and that's why the price tag of the Ford Lightning has really gone up year after year since it launched. We expect to see the exact same thing over here in the Silverado EV. Let me know what you think about this electric truck. I'm really intrigued because as far as truck things go, this is better at most of them except for payload versus the Lightning. The tricky thing with the Lightning, of course, is that you can get up to 2,200 pounds of payload capability, but you won't be able to go that far if you get the model with 2,200 pounds of payload. This one, on the other hand, will get you a lot further if you have 1,400 pounds on board. That's right at the lower end of the Lightning payload capability. Towing capability is also higher standard in this, pretty equal to what we find in the F-150 Lightning, but the way this tows is certainly superior. It feels better out on the road. It's going to be a little bit louder in the cabin because of the unibody truck design versus the body-on-frame design, but the way that it pulls the trailer is going to be better, and it's certainly going to pull that trailer longer because of its greater efficiency, its greater aerodynamics, and the fact that it has a much, much bigger battery. Again, over 200 kilowatt hours versus 135 kilowatt hours in that Lightning. Sorry, 131 kilowatt hours in the Lightning. It is a big, big battery pack. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the next generation of electric trucks. We expect to see a really big battery pack in the Cybertruck if and when it ever comes. And RAM has already announced that their electric truck is going to have a battery that's even bigger than this to theoretically give you over 500 miles of range. Let me know what you would be interested in down there in the comments section below. Are you interested in the long electric range? And of course, the commensurate price tag increase that brings, because again, this is a pretty expensive truck. We're talking $80,000 essentially for a urethane steering wheel, vinyl floors, vinyl seats, etc. The basic version of the work truck at 450 miles of range. Will the prices come down in the future? We just don't know at this point in time. I would hope that they would drop at least a little bit. But I also wouldn't be surprised if electric trucks just ended up generally more expensive than the gasoline trucks that they are replacing. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section below. And are you interested in one? Have you pre-ordered one already? If you haven't and you want one, sorry it's a little bit late. They've already closed all the pre-orders for the consumer versions. I would definitely be intrigued by maybe a 300-mile range Silverado EV with some of the niceties on the inside and faster charging. That is one thing worth noting, is that the fast DC fast charge speeds we find in the Ultium platform vehicles require the larger number of cells. So none of the Ultium platform vehicles with 20 or lower module packs will charge as fast as the 24 module packs we find in this or in the Hummer. How fast the rest of the lineup will charge, we don't know, so be sure and stay tuned for all that coming up soon. See all of you later.